If they had listened to me, those children wouldn't be coughing up blood. I submitted the report on a Tuesday morning. It was 47 pages long. Dense, technical, precise, but not alarmist, not dramatic, just truth. Toxic heavy metal runoff, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, seeping into the Blue Ridge watershed, the same one that fed into 5 rural school districts and over 300,000 homes. I had data models, longitudinal studies, water tables, and satellite imagery. I didn't panic. I calculated, and I warned. Page 12 was the most important. Projected contamination increase by Q3. Page 31. Correlation with respiratory illness cases in nearby counties. Page 44. Predicted legal liability if we failed to act. I handed it to my boss, Martin. He skimmed the executive summary. His face tightened. "This language is a little too intense," he said, handing it back like it had burned him. "Kira, investors won't like it." I blinked. Not the public won't like it. Not the EPA won't like it. Investors. That Friday, a new version of my report landed in my inbox. Redlined. Gutted. Words like immediate action required were softened to recommend monitoring. Toxic became trace elements. Dangerous became manageable risk. Manageable. I scrolled through the edits, page after page. My fingers clenched the mouse so tightly my hand cramped. I forwarded the new version to myself. Then I pulled up the original and hit print. 47 pages slid out of the printer like a slow confession. I tucked them into my bag, along with the USB drive. That night, I started packing my desk. Just the small things. Framed photo. Books. My mug. I didn't make a scene. Not yet. My name is Dr. Kira Solomon. I am an environmental risk analyst at Ridgeview Mining Corporation. Ridgeview Mining Corporation was a mid-sized, but highly influential natural resource extraction company specializing in rare earth minerals and heavy metal mining. Our core operations were based in Blue Ridge County, where we extracted materials like cadmium, mercury, and arsenic-laden ores used in electronics, batteries, and industrial applications. We marketed ourselves as an innovator in clean mining technologies, but behind the scenes, little did I know that my bosses were cutting corners on environmental safety, falsifying risk assessments, and suppressing internal reports until my report. Interestingly, the company's slogan was integrity, innovation, impact. A cruel irony by the time the scandal erupted. The next Monday, Martin called me in for a touch base. His voice was syrupy, too smooth. "Kira, we're moving in a different direction. Your skills are best suited to back-end analysis. No more direct reporting. Translation. You've been benched." He said it was about tone, that my messaging lacked strategic alignment. I nodded, smiled, pretended to understand. Inside, I was taking notes, because if they wanted a quiet woman, they picked the wrong analyst. 3 weeks later, I saw the first local news story. Unusual spike in child respiratory cases linked to water supply in Blue Ridge Valley. A 3-year-old girl collapsed during recess. Collapsed. Her lungs filled with blood. Her mother's interview played on a loop, tear-streaked, furious. They said the water was fine. I watched that clip 10 times. Every frame felt like a verdict. I pulled out the original report again. The timestamp, the data, the warnings they buried. And I decided, whistleblower laws are complicated. You have to be careful. Clean. Undeniable. So I got a lawyer. Quietly. Not one from the firm's preferred list. Someone with fire in her eyes and experience taking down corporations twice our size. I made her read the report. All 47 pages. By the time she got to page 31, she sat back and said, "They knew." I nodded. They did. The children weren't the only ones coughing. Local clinics reported a surge in nosebleeds, fatigue, hair loss. One school shut down entirely after trace amounts of arsenic were found in the cafeteria water system. The firm issued a press release. Unrelated, unconfirmed, environmental fluctuations. Lies, but slick, polished lies. The kind written by people in $3,000 suits with speechwriters and NDAs. I wasn't going to fight them with emotion. I had something better. Documentation. I sent an encrypted drive to the EPA. Included the original report, internal emails, meeting transcripts. I labeled it Blue Ridge Contamination, Suppressed Risk Report by Dr. Kira Solomon. I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a journalist. She didn't ask if the company covered it up. She asked why. I met her in a public park. Wore sunglasses. Gave her a folder. She opened it and froze. This is damning. It's just data, I said. Data they didn't want anyone to see. The story dropped on a Thursday. Front page. Headline in bold. Water, lies, and ledgers. Insider reports company ignored toxic risks to protect investors. They didn't name me. Not yet. But people started whispering. My phone buzzed nonstop. Martin was placed on administrative leave. 2 board members resigned. And then, the lawsuits started. By Monday, the EPA issued a formal investigation. Within days, the company's stock dropped 18%. Their spokesperson said, "We take these allegations seriously." But I knew better. They took the exposure seriously. Not the people, not the kids. It started with thunder. A storm rolled in fast, black sky, heavy wind, the kind of rain that makes the soil remember every buried sin. The mine's retention pools couldn't hold. They weren't built to. They were a patch job, a spreadsheet solution to a chemical problem. And so, as the water rose, it carried more than rain. It carried sludge, thick, metallic, poisonous. Mercury, cadmium, arsenic. All of it bleeding into the tributaries that fed the valley like veins. By morning, the river had changed color. Orange. Not rust. Not clay. This was different. Like the land itself was trying to signal SOS. And the fish? They surfaced belly up, glass-eyed. Hundreds of them, floating in neat rows like soldiers fallen in a war no one declared. A teenager caught the first drone footage. She was 17, had a science project due, and she sent up her quadcopter because she thought the river looked weird from her bedroom window. The drone swept over the bend behind Millersfield Farm, captured everything: dead trout, foaming banks, and further down the stream, 2 cows wobbling in a field before collapsing. The video hit TikTok at 8:42 a.m. By 9:15, #ToxicTruth was trending in 5 states. I watched the video in silence, alone on my laptop, replaying it like a slow-motion horror film. Click, play, pause, rewind. Again, not because I didn't believe it, but because I did, because I warned them, because I saw this coming. This was page 12 of my original report, the worst-case flood scenario. The one they said was extremely unlikely. The one they cut from the executive summary because it was too speculative. By noon, journalists were camped outside the mining facility's gates. Hazmat teams moved in. Reporters held up jars of Orange River water like evidence at a trial. The governor released a statement. "We are monitoring the situation. Preliminary signs point to natural mineral sediment disturbance caused by excessive rainfall." Natural, as if rainfall turns water the color of rusted blood. As if sediment suffocates trout and makes cattle seize. The mining company followed suit, blamed unexpected environmental anomalies, said the situation was contained, used words like preliminary and pending. I waited, because this time, I wasn't alone. It happened the next day. A message in my inbox. Anonymous. No subject line. One attachment. A PDF. Title. Internal Correspondence, Blue Ridge Containment. I clicked it open. Internal emails. Meeting notes. Timestamped memos. And one line that made my chest go still. Subject. Kira Solomon's risk memo. Too damaging? It was dated 2 weeks before they reassigned me. Sent by a compliance officer named Dylan Rhodes to Martin, my former boss. Kira's risk memo outlines liability exposure in catastrophic flood scenarios. If leaked, it could trigger SEC scrutiny. Suggest editing language for Investor Optics. Investor Optics. Not safety. Not science. Not the children. Just appearances. Another email, same thread. Recommend filing original under internal review archive. No external disclosure. They buried it. Deliberately. Knew exactly what would happen. And chose the bottom line anyway. I found Dylan Rhodes on LinkedIn. Sent a one-line message. You know what they did? So do I. He responded 17 minutes later. 3 words. Can we talk? We met in a diner off Route 62. Neutral ground. He looked 10 years older than his profile photo. He didn't try to defend himself. Didn't spin. He just slid a thumb drive across the table. All of it's on there, he said. Memos. Legal edits. Video from an internal strategy session. You'll want minute 42. I nodded once. Didn't thank him. This wasn't gratitude. This was accountability. The video was from a board meeting. Grainy audio. Side angle. Executives around a glass table, sipping bottled water as they debated risk mitigation strategies. At 42 minutes in, Martin spoke. She's right, but it's too much. Too loud. We'll drown in lawsuits if this gets out. Another exec replied. So what do we do? Martin shrugged. Reword it. Spin the data. Make it survivable. And someone, I still don't know who, laughed. That's the beauty of being the source. We control the truth. That line. It chilled me. Because it's not just a lie. It's a doctrine. The footage leaked to the press within 24 hours. I didn't send it directly. I didn't have to. The journalist I'd met in the park had sources of her own now. We were no longer a whisper. We were a wave. Hashtag Toxic Truth started trending again, louder this time. Protests formed outside the company's regional office. A congressional committee announced a formal inquiry. And someone spray-painted on the company's front gates. We drink this water. I still hadn't gone public. Not by name. Not yet. But now they were trying to find me. HR reached out. So did legal. They called it a clarification request. Said they were conducting an internal review. I ignored them. Because I knew what came next. They weren't preparing to fix it. They were preparing to bury me. But it was too late for that. I stood at the edge of the river that weekend. The orange tint was still there, but fainter. The cleanup had begun. Too late for the fish. Too late for the families. But maybe not too late for the truth. I took a picture. Posted it with one sentence. Page 12. I warned them. The comments exploded. People started connecting the dots. And the name Dr. Kira Solomon trended for the first time. They wanted silence. They got me instead. And I'm not done yet. I didn't want revenge. I wanted them to feel what it's like to be silenced. I didn't ask for the spotlight. But when the summons arrived on official letterhead, hand-delivered by courier, I was overjoyed. State Environmental Oversight Committee. Request for testimony, Dr. Kira Solomon. Subject, contamination incident, Blue Ridge Watershed. They gave me 5 minutes. I only needed 3. I arrived in a black blazer. No makeup. No jewelry. Just the truth. And a flash drive. The hearing chamber was packed. Reporters lined the back wall. 3 camera crews. And a dozen suited men with expressions like sour milk. They weren't expecting me to show. They were hoping I'd stay quiet. They still didn't understand. Silence was their weapon. Mine was the record. I stepped to the mic. The chairwoman adjusted her glasses and said, "You may proceed, Dr. Solomon." I looked up. My voice steady. Flat. Quietly intense. I submitted my report on March 12, 9:42 a.m. It included environmental risk projections for flooding events near the mine's containment site. I held up the folder. This is the original. Unedited. Signed. Timestamped. Metadata intact. A murmur swept the room. And read from my report. Page by page. I flipped to page 7 and began reading. Immediate danger to human and animal health if operations continue without remediation. Risk of catastrophic contamination during seasonal storms is high. I paused. Looked them in the eye. This section was deleted before release to stakeholders. Dangerous levels of cadmium observed at monitoring site 12, I quoted. Recommended immediate intervention. Page 26. When I looked up, some of them wouldn't meet my eyes. But one did. A mother, sitting in the back row. Her son had nosebleeds for 2 months before anyone believed her. She mouthed, "Thank you." Silence. The kind you can taste. Then I played the recording. I'd kept it for months. Back when I still believed someone might do the right thing. If they just heard it. I hit play. Tone it down, Kira. We can't afford panic right now. The voice was crisp. Recognizable. Vice President of Risk Management, Russell Ingram. The man who rewrote my report. Another voice on the tape, mine. If people get sick, will they say we overreacted? A pause. Then Russell again. They'll thank us for keeping it quiet. People don't want fear, they want stability. I stopped the tape. Panic, I said quietly, was their concern. Not poisoning the water. Not dead livestock. Not children coughing up blood. I let the words sit. Let the camera zoom in on my face. No tears. No theatrics. Just fact. A committee member leaned forward. Senator Du Bois. Former military. Rumored to have presidential ambitions. He cleared his throat. Dr. Solomon, are you suggesting your report was knowingly suppressed? I'm not suggesting, I replied. I'm confirming. I tapped the folder. There are email chains, legal edits, recorded conversations, all time-stamped, all archived. His jaw tightened. I assume you've shared these with appropriate federal agencies? I smiled faintly. 3 of them, including the SEC. The room shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't just a whistleblower. I was a witness. An asset. A threat. After the hearing, cameras swarmed. Dr. Solomon, do you think company executives committed a crime? Were you retaliated against? What's your message to the public? I kept walking. But one reporter, a woman early 30s wearing scuffed boots, caught my eye. She asked, "Is this revenge?" I stopped. Met her gaze. I didn't expose them for revenge. No, I said. I don't want revenge. I want them to feel what it's like to be silenced. I did it because truth buried is still truth. And one way or another, it always claws its way to the surface. She nodded slowly. Didn't press. She understood. Yes, there was a part of me that wanted them to feel what I felt. Silenced. Dismissed. Brushed off like a smudge on a balance sheet. Now, they're the ones scrambling. And me. I'm just getting started. That night, I watched the evening news alone. Footage of the hearing. Clips of my testimony. Then a montage, orange rivers, dead fish, the drone video, the graffiti. We drink this water. A commentator called it the most damning environmental scandal in the state's history. The headline across the bottom of the screen? Dr. Kira Solomon, the analyst who tried to warn them. My name. Finally. Not buried in edits. Not footnoted or flagged. Front and center. The next morning, I woke up to 1,327 unread emails. From parents, teachers, scientists, whistleblowers from other industries. Some said thank you. Some said me too. Some just said, I was scared, but now I'm not. That one stuck with me. Because that's what truth does when it's finally spoken. It doesn't just expose the rot. It reminds people they're not crazy for smelling it. Later that week, the governor's office announced an independent audit of the mining company. Multiple resignations followed. Russell Ingram stepped down to pursue other opportunities. Translation: they ran before they were shoved. But the cleanup? That's just starting. The soil will take years to heal. Some damage can't be undone. But now at least it won't be ignored. I still have the flash drive. Not because I need it, but because it reminds me. I wasn't wrong. I wasn't too loud. I wasn't alarmist. I was early. They thought they could bury it. The river. The footage. The memo with my name. They underestimated what happens when the truth floats to the surface, bloated, undeniable, and reeking of guilt. The committee didn't just release a statement. They launched a full-scale criminal investigation. Subpoenas, forensic audits, testimony under oath. And I watched quietly as Ridgeview Mining began to implode. From the top down, the CEO, Michael Thorne, resigned within 6 days. Health reasons, the press release said. Right. His cholesterol wasn't the issue. It was the paper trail. Dozens of emails, some flagged, some deleted, some lost, but later recovered. They told the story loud and clear. Suppress the data. Edit the report. Protect the investors. Have you subscribed to our channel yet? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. One email had a subject line I'll never forget. Kira Solomon, risk profile liability? They didn't even use my title. Not Dr. Solomon. Just a name like I was a bad debt on a ledger. Turns out they were right about one thing. I was a liability to their lies. Call logs showed internal meetings after I submitted my report. Private calls between the legal team and the board. A flurry of edits labeled damage control. The final version of my report? They'd run it through 3 rounds of legal scrub, rewritten until it sounded like a pamphlet for bottled water. The state hit Ridgeview with $48 million in combined fines, penalties, and class action settlements. It wasn't enough. It never is. But it was the first time anyone had put a real price on their cover-up. Not a slap on the wrist. A ledger entry with consequences. The whistleblower, the junior engineer, was granted immunity. He testified remotely, voice shaking but clear. Said he'd read my original memo. Said they laughed at it in a meeting. Called me overdramatic. He also said he couldn't sleep after the river turned orange. I believed him. And then the letters started coming. Not from lawyers or committees. From families. One envelope, postmarked from a rural county near the spill site, held a handwritten note and a photo. A little boy, 5 years old. Face pale, dark circles under his eyes. Hooked to a dialysis machine. The letter was from his mother. We lost Eli last month. Kidney failure. They told us it was genetic. But we never had issues until the water changed. I found your name in an article. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for not letting them erase what happened. I held that letter for a long time. Long after the photo blurred behind my tears. I cried. Quietly. Alone. And then, I went back to work. Because this isn't a movie. Justice doesn't roll credits. There's always more damage than can be undone. The cleanup began slowly. Ridgeview's public statement was a masterclass in evasion. We acknowledged the seriousness of recent events. We are committed to transparency and ongoing community engagement. They were committed, now, after the fact, after the funerals, after the fish floated belly up. I watched their new commercials. A rebrand, a new logo, soft piano music, like the past could be re-edited too. The real work was happening far from cameras. Water testing, soil detox, medical screenings for local families. I volunteered to help build the new data infrastructure. An open access portal, live contamination maps, public transparency reports. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't make headlines. But it mattered. Sometimes I still hear Russell Ingram's voice in my head. We can't afford panic. But panic wasn't the problem. It was pretending nothing was wrong. The media moved on. They always do. Another scandal. Another disaster. Another person screaming into the void, hoping someone hears. But in Blue Ridge County, they remembered. At a town hall 6 months later, a teacher hugged me and whispered, "My students know your name. You're in our civics class now. Under ethics and accountability." I didn't want fame. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted the truth to live longer than the lie. And now it does. They wanted me gone. Now I'm the one rewriting the rules. It was a Thursday afternoon when my phone rang. Unknown number. No voicemail. Just a direct call. I let it go to missed once. Then twice. The third time I picked up. A clipped voice said, "Dr. Solomon, this is the office of the governor. The deputy director would like a word." I braced myself. I wasn't in the mood for more apologies. Or platitudes. Or offers of a symbolic advisory role. But it wasn't that. Not even close. "We're forming a new state environmental risk task force," the deputy director said. "We want you to lead it." My stomach flipped. Not from excitement. From gravity. Because I knew what that meant. Accountability. Structure. Reform. The kind that would rattle industries. I said yes. Not for recognition. For duty. Because I'd seen the cost of silence. And I couldn't sit back while someone else's child paid it. My first act as task force director? Mandatory transparency laws for all extractive industries operating in-state. No loopholes. No redactions. No, tone it down. If a company wanted to pull something from the ground, they had to report what it might poison, in full. We created a public digital portal. A living archive. Every submitted risk report available in real time. No edits. No scrubbing. No backdoor revisions. I named it the Open Earth Index. And I made sure it bore the seal of the state and the signature of the analyst. No more ghostwriters. No more buried warnings. The The backlash came quickly. Lobbyists flooded the Capitol. Editorials screamed about anti-business overreach. One exec even called me the death of innovation. I didn't flinch, because innovation shouldn't mean contaminated water, dead children, and dead livestock. Reporters asked if I felt vindicated. I gave the same answer every time. This isn't about me. It never was. It's about facts, and the freedom to speak them without being erased. But privately, there were moments, little ones, like walking past Ridgeview Mining's old headquarters. Once a fortress of brushed steel and tinted glass. Now dark, empty, condemned. The For Lease sign still hung in the cracked lobby window, and their mission statement, etched in marble, was half pried off the wall. Integrity, innovation, impact. Only impact remained fully intact. The irony wasn't lost on me. Some nights I'd pause across the street. No audience, no cameras, just me, watching a place that once tried to erase my voice. Now silent, not by design, but by collapse. People started sending me things, copies of their own risk memos, environmental scans, photos of towns living downstream from danger. One came from a high school science teacher in West Virginia. She'd started a student project to monitor soil pH levels near coal facilities. She signed the letter. Your fight made ours possible. We call it the Solomon Standard. I didn't cry, but I did sit still for a long time, because I understood what it meant to matter in the quiet. Not on magazine covers, not at award ceremonies, but in the way rules are written, the way children breathe, the way companies pause, because someone finally made the cost of lying too high. Ridgeview appealed the fines. They lost. Then they tried to relaunch under a different name. Didn't work, because the public had access now to the data, the reports, the truth. Once I ran into Russell Ingram, my old boss, at a conference. He avoided eye contact. I didn't. I walked straight up and said, "You once told me the truth was too expensive. Turns out the lie cost more." He nodded. Didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His silence was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get. Did I gloat, maybe? But sometimes when I passed that empty Ridgeview building, I let myself breathe a little deeper. The same way I breathe when I open the latest task force report, or when I see a risk analyst cite my report as precedent. The power isn't loud. It doesn't scream. But it's there, built into law, etched into systems, unshakable. They tried to cut me out. They tried to rewrite my words. Now, I'm the one holding the pen. Here are some questions for you, our viewers. What would you do if you discovered a corporate cover-up affecting your community? Do you think transparency laws are enough to prevent corporate deception? Why or why not? What was your reaction to Kira's decision to fight for the truth despite the risks? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell because we have more stories coming up just for you.